Coming up on today's show, it's Big Ten basketball again here back on today. So we got games to preview coming up tonight. And also, you may have heard some news about Big Ten TV rights. We'll tell you about exactly what's going on with that here on Locked On Big Ten.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Locked On Big Ten. I'm your host, Nate Dickinson. Coming up on today's show, we're going to get into Big Ten media rights and the games coming up tonight around the conference. We got some good ones. First, though, thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every weekday, Monday through Friday. We're here for you with everything that you need to know about the conference, so you can stay up to date all the time. And also, our show today is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. All right, so let's dive into the show here. We're going to talk more about some Big Ten TV stuff here in just a little bit. But right now, I need to get into what's going on just with Big Ten scores and games here today. Get you in through the summary so we can get into the good stuff. Coming up again tonight in the Big Ten, men's basketball back in action after a day off on Monday. Number 15, Wisconsin is at Indiana. That one's set to be a good one at Assembly Hall. Also, Minnesota's on the road at number 18, Ohio State. And number 19, Michigan State will be on the road at Penn State for a Big Ten road test for a team that, again, in the Nittany Lions, hasn't been playing at least up to the standards that Michigan State would find too competitive for them here tonight. But again, anything can happen here in the Big Ten. Scores from the women's side of things from yesterday. They'll take a day off today, actually. We have in 3 games, number 5, Indiana was upset on the road by Nebraska. The unranked Cornhuskers defeat the Hoosiers 72-55, the final score. Big upset in women's basketball there. Elsewhere, number 22, Iowa lost at home to number 13, Maryland, 81-69. And number 18, Ohio State took care of Illinois on the road, 86-67. That's all for the scores around the Big Ten. Let's get into the latest from Joe Lunardi in his field of 68. A nice treat from Joe on a Tuesday. He gives us an updated full bracket and all teams of 68, from 1 to 68, how he has them ranked. And here's how the Big Ten teams stack up. The top teams are all still the same. Purdue's on the 2 line, Illinois a 3 seed, Wisconsin a 4 seed. Michigan State and Ohio State are both listed as 5 seeds, Iowa a 7. Indiana's fallen down to a 10 seed. Again, they got a good chance to get a win at home against Wisconsin here tonight. And then a big number of Big Ten teams all of a sudden crowding that tournament bubble for Joe Lunardi too. Michigan, now the second team out, and Rutgers, the 5th team out of the field, according to Lunardi. And again, we mentioned it in the course of this last week. Both those squads have plenty of chances to pick up more big wins and get safely into that field by the time we get to the end of it. None of the other, teams that have 7 teams in the tournament field right now are as close to getting another one in as the Big Ten. So potential for the Big Ten to take that again lead and get that 8th, potentially 9th team into the field. We're going to take a break right here on Locked On Big Ten and get into things going on with the Big Ten media rights. Now, you may have heard some news going around saying the Big Ten's in for a big payday and some stuff going on with ESPN. We'll break down exactly what the situation is with the Big Ten's television rights and what you can expect going forward. It's not going to be anything really happening right away, but it will be a big payday at some point for the conference and its schools. We'll talk about that and what that means here on Locked On Big Ten in just a second. BetOnline is the place to go for all of your online sports betting needs this year. It's betonline.net with a new website that the people love and all sorts of new news, podcasts, of course, ways for you to bet out there on the site too. Of course, the big game's coming up in a couple of weeks. You're going to have to get your money in on that, but baseball season's right around the corner. Basketball and hockey are still in full swing, so if you need to make sure that you're at the best place to make sure you're taking full advantage of all your smart picks, head on over to betonline.net. It's betonline.net, your place to go for all of your online sportsbook needs. Hey, tune back into Locked On Big Ten. I'm Nate Dickinson. So the Big Ten has some TV stuff going on, and we're going to get into it. First, though, of course, thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every weekday. Of course, once you're done here, be sure to head on over to any of the other team shows here in the Big Ten podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network. We've got shows for teams all around the Big Ten, so if you're interested in getting a deeper dive into your particular fan base, you can get more of that at the individual school's show. So, of course, once you're done here, be sure to check them out. We're talking about the money side of things, at least on the TV deal in the Big Ten. There's been a lot of money talk as of late in college sports. A lot of it, though, dealing with the players and the conference realignment. Of course, TV, though, is just as big, if not bigger, than any other factor for just about every school in the Power Five. And of course, the conferences are the ones that make that big money. It's what drives a lot of this movement. So let's talk about what the Big Ten is actually doing right now, because there have been a couple of things that have come out here today about just what it means the Big Ten is, or what's going to happen to the Big Ten over the next couple of years with media. And of course, with Big Ten fans, I know, having had the experience before, you're always worried about not being able to watch your game when the money gets just too complicated. So first and foremost, what you need to know is that nothing's really going to happen right now. There's not going to be any sort of big change that you have to make, at least immediately. This is just really the very, very start of this process. The reason why it still gets attention is because it's going to be a very, very long process, potentially, and also a very, very economic process as well. A lot of money is going to come to the Big Ten at the end of this, and it's really going to set the pace, of course, as every deal does in this kind of avenue, for the future conferences to make their media deals as well. So let's actually get into it. What is happening right now? The reports that you're hearing about the Big Ten maybe negotiating things with ESPN, that's just really with the deal that the Big Ten has with the worldwide leader in sports right now. So there's this exclusive window that the conference is going into where basically it's just the Big Ten and ESPN, and those two sides can come together and try to make a deal. It's not, of course, saying that you have to get something done. There's nothing tied to continuing this deal beyond when it expires, which is in 2023, by the way, on paper. But this is just the time that they set aside, and ESPN said, hey, when this comes to an end, we want to have first dibs for at least a little while into making sure that we can try to keep this deal if we want it. Now, when the first deal was signed with the Big Ten long ago, of course, ESPN probably assumed that they would want to keep up with things. But you got to remember, the Big Ten Network was really the first network of its kind that came up with this kind of a thing. Of course, rights deals for Big Ten games have always been out there since TV started up. Right now, it is ESPN and Fox who split those rights. So basically, when a game's not on the Big Ten Network or a Big Ten Plus, you find it on an ESPN network or a Fox network. They have divided those for a valuation total combined of about $440 million. The current deal is right now that they have with those TV networks. The reports coming out, though, are that the Big Ten could, in this round, fetch more than $1 billion in that deal, which is why this is getting so much attention right now, because it's, one, more than double what the Big Ten has at the moment, but two, it's really the biggest prize left as far as big fish in media marketing and sports viewership goes, at least for a little while. The Big 12 and the SEC are the other two big conferences that you need. They're both locked up for a little while now. The Big 10 is the only one that really has a bunch of momentum in both basketball and football left. The ACC is having a down basketball year. The football side of things never been great, especially when Clemson isn't there as they were this year. The Pac-12 has struggled to compete in both sports as far as just viewership and also teams on the field late in the season too. So the Big Ten is the biggest fish left to be had. So people are going to pay top dollar. And just so everyone knows, no deal is going to get done with ESPN in this window. Big Ten has made it clear, it was the Sports Business Journal first reporting, that they're going to let this window run out. They want to, at the very least, get the other bidders in there. Not that they won't go back to ESPN, not that you're not going to see Big Ten games on ESPN, but they're going to make ESPN pay the top dollar. And I don't know what ESPN offers right now, but in order for any sort of deal to actually get made, I would imagine ESPN would have to go so far and above what they'd actually want to that it's just virtually impossible that it's going to get done. If it happens, I'd be shocked. You have to get this free market started. You have to at least let these networks compete for the paycheck. So the Big Ten's going to get a whole lot of money. Again, this ends in 2022 and 23. The end of that school year is when the rights are officially up. So that's when these networks are fighting to get their name on the Big Ten games. After that, of course, it's just a matter for fans of where you're going to watch your games. But also, you think more bigger picture, of course the Big Ten gets a little bit of an advantage here over those, say, most competed with conferences, the SEC and the Big 12. SEC in football, Big 12 in, well, both football and now basketball too, I would suppose. But when the Big Ten signs this deal, when it starts getting that money and it starts distributing that out to schools, I don't know how much of an advantage it'll end up being. I'm not that kind of a numbers guy. But any sort of money advantage that you can get over the SEC, the Big 12, it's going to go into your athletic department. It's going to go into making teams better. It's going to go into getting recruiting. It's going to go into really just all the things that the money's always gone into in college sports. I don't need to go down the list for you. So with the money being the thing that drives everything right now, and now more than ever, I mean, we've seen Big 12 is, we don't know what it is. Texas and Oklahoma are leaving for the SEC because of this reason. The Big Ten's advantage that it's going to have in this money, I have to at least think like, all right, yes, good stuff. Again, I'm not the money guy. We'll get a money guy in here at some point to talk about exactly what impact this is going to have on everything. But you just know that this is Big Ten being the best at basketball and competing to be the best on the football field year in and year out as well. That's what you get at the end of the day. You get the big payday and you get the money advantage, and the Big Ten's signing up for it. I don't know what that means for where you're going to watch your Big Ten football games after this rights deal ends, but to be completely honest, it's not really going to matter all that much. You're going to be able to find your games, whether it's somewhere online or somewhere in a traditional TV station or some combination or both. They're going to be there. And honestly, you're going to go find them if they're there to be found and pay the money because it's going to be what you want to pay money for. So when you think about just kind of like the big picture stuff, yeah, maybe you might have to change to a different station, but the Big Ten's going to have a whole lot more money at the end of the day. That's the real gist of it. But again, nothing's going to happen yet, and this really is just the first step. Them getting through this window with ESPN, not even really making a deal or trying to, I would imagine, but just getting through the end of it so they can hear what everybody else has to offer. We'll be back in just a minute here on Locked On Big Ten. I want to talk about Keegan Murray with Iowa because a while back I put him as the top performer in the Big Ten, but I never really thought he had a great shot at dominating the other star names to actually win Conference Player of the Year. It's getting down to the end of the season. He's still right there. We'll talk more about it here to wrap up the show on Locked On Big Ten. Well, it's Big Ten season, which means cold days, windy nights, and not great conditions for driving. But that's where Rock Auto can come in and help. If you need any sort of upgrade or repair on your car, just want to make sure you got a fresh battery so nothing goes dead while you're driving through the cold here in Big Ten country, you can head on over to rockauto.com and see what the best price is for whatever it is that you're looking for, because Rock Auto has it. They cut out the middleman, a family-owned business that really just wants to focus on making sure that you're getting the part that you need without getting ripped off. Because honestly, even if you don't know cars, that doesn't mean that you deserve to pay more than you should for the parts that you need for any, again, repair, upgrade, or even just getting new carpets you can go find over at Rock Auto. So head on over to rockauto.com right now. Again, make sure that you let them know that we sent you by putting Locked On in the little box that they have for how did you hear about us. They'll know that we sent you, and of course, you'll be happy with everything that you have over at Rock Auto, with the convenience, the prices, and being able to have the confidence and comfort of knowing that you're getting exactly what you need for what you want, and of course, without having to leave your home. and getting it delivered right to your door. Hey, welcome back into Locked On Big Ten. Finishing up the show today. Before we get there, be sure to, once you're done here with Locked On Big Ten, tune in to Locked On Bets. Your boy Q and Lee Sterling have analysis on all of the bets from around sports that you need to be keeping an eye on. And of course, with the help of our partners at BetOnline, they're giving you all the best lines and the best picks to go to. It is Locked On Bets with your boy Q and Lee Sterling every weekday, just like we do it here on Locked On Big Ten. All right, I wanted to wrap up here talking about Keegan Murray because I got his page up here with the stats, and I was thinking earlier about an episode we did a while back, just where I, quite frankly, not having a whole lot of other stuff to talk about at the time, just thought I'd rank where the Big Ten players are right now. Because Big Ten has a whole lot of star power and a whole lot of really good talent to sift through. And it's hard to kind of differentiate who's top, who's like in the top 5, top 10, all that kind of stuff. When we did that, I had Keegan Murray on the top. Because just on paper, it was clear he had been playing the best basketball in the conference. But even when I did that, I kind of just put him at the top, and then I started to look more down at like the 2, 3, and 4 guys, because those were the names we knew. We're talking about Kofi Cockburn. We're talking about Jaden Ivey. We're talking about Trace Jackson Davis. We're talking about players who had already been stars in the Big Ten and were stepping it up to that next level that they needed to. When I had Keegan Murray up there and I was dismissive, it was really just because it was a guy I hadn't known on an Iowa team that, quite frankly, wasn't supposed to be all that good. Now, not that this tournament bid that they have pretty well secured right now isn't well earned or expected, but they lost so much. And Keegan Murray was a guy who was coming off the bench last year. So for him to just explode in this way, again, he proved it early, and there were people knowing that he was really, really good. But I was always expecting him to fall off some. That hasn't been the case. He was the leader in player efficiency rating when we did that episode before. Now, not only does he lead the Big Ten, he leads the entire country in that category. He's again still on the Wooden Award watch list with a number of other Big Ten players, as people being watched for as the best player in the entire country right now. He leads the Big Ten in points. He's 7th in all of college basketball in points. Leads the Big Ten in points per game. 3rd in points per game at 23.3. 7th in the Big Ten in rebounds. 3rd in rebounds per game. I'm just going down this list. That's why it sounds so fragmented. I'll be a little bit more structured here. Blocks per game, he's in 4th right now. Steals per game, 7th. Free throw percentage in the top 10. 3-point percentage. He doesn't actually do that well in, but 2-point percentage in the top 5. He's someone who can score it inside, outside, does it on defensive side, inside and outside, blocking shots, getting steals. He has been the complete package. He leads the NCAA in win shares. He leads the Big Ten in points produced. He leads the Big Ten in offensive box plus minus, offensive win shares, all that advanced kind of stuff. It has been a consistency out of Keegan Murray that I did not expect to see when we did that show before. I did not expect him to be able to keep it up as we got into Big Ten play. And to my credit, not that I deserve all that much credit, there was a time where I was a little bit right. I mentioned it on the show. He had in 4 or 5 games 15 points or less, which is still really good, of course, but just under his standard. Since then, 21, 24, 30, and 37 on Saturday against Nebraska. The guy is the real deal after a very, very small slump. And again, these are games against not so great teams that he has been performing better against. But he has proven that he is for real. I mean, I guess I knew he was for real before, but he's proven that he is like top of the top for real. Like really actually in this player of the year conversation for real. And he's still at the top of the board right now for me. Still a whole lot of basketball left to play. And he does have that disadvantage of being on an Iowa team that's not going to be at the top of the headlines in the Big Ten at any time soon. But I still believe, and I mean, it's not up for me to believe. The numbers say it. It's undeniable that he has been just as good as anybody. And while you could argue somebody has been just as good, I don't think you could easily argue that anybody has been clearly better in the Big Ten than Keegan Murray has been for Iowa this season. That's Locked On Big Ten here on your Tuesday. A whole lot of Big Ten games coming up later tonight. 3 of them that we'll go over tomorrow. And of course, we'll have all sorts of other things to talk about as well as we get into Locked On Big Ten on a Wednesday. Until then, I'm Nate Dickinson with Locked On.